I originally started out as a member of the North Carolina Woodturners Guild, and then Frank Pinta and I would go over to his house and turn almost every Thursday or Friday, and it got so that the word got out that he would let people come and turn. He had 2 or 3 lathes, and it got to be so we had 15, 20 people coming. We decided the best thing to do is start. So we started Chapel Hill Woodturners. That's my shirt here, and we are 32 people strong. We try to keep it small, but we have a warehouse that we've rented with 15 lathes in it, and then we've got a demonstrator lathe of a 2436, something like this one, for demonstrators use, and we're buying a Powermatic from John C. Campbell this December. By the way, if you don't know about that, I don't know if you ever go to John C. Campbell much, but they sell their lathes every 3 years for what they paid for them, and they usually buy them at a wholesale price. This year, I think they're selling for $2,800 or $2,900 for a 3-year-old Powermatic. They have been used every day just about during the year, but they're in really good shape. Anyhow, our club is designed, or what we want to do is we want to train demonstrators and instructors. So if you came to our club to do a demonstration, you're not going to get paid. David Ellsworth's been there, some other guys have been there, Mark Soleil, people like that. And they come and turn, and we put them up, and then we put up with them, and they put up with us. But it's just every week we meet on Thursdays. Every member of the club, everybody that wants to turn on the 15 small lathes or the 1 big lathe. So there's always somebody coming up with new ideas, or they see a problem or something like that. So we all have a chance to share it. And so we'll have impromptu demonstrations, and we'll have scheduled demonstrations as well. Anyway, my thing was, I've been turning since 1996, and I'm not that good, but I like to turn things for other people. And I started out one year deciding I would make Christmas ornaments for the little kids in the neighborhood, because we had a bunch of 2 and 3 and 4-year-old kids in the neighborhood, and we were starting to have some kids that were nieces and nephews. So I made about 12 ornaments the first year, went around and I put a ribbon on them and gave them to the little kids, and their parents started collecting them. And some of the kids now are 17, 18 years old. They got 15 different ornaments that are all handmade, and they say my name on them, which is more important. And the thing is every year I try to come up with a different kind of ornament. So I've come up with some things that are fairly unique to me, and some things that are borrowed from other people and have some changes to them. But lately, our club has been doing a lot of things with veneer and exotic woods. We found a place down in Hubert, North Carolina, which is real close to where the hurricane hit, but it didn't get hurt, that imports exotic woods from all over the world, except Antarctica, because there's not many trees there. But that's, we'll probably find a shipwreck or something one day. But anyway, we use all their exotic woods, and we also have Sowers Veneers in Lexington, North Carolina. And so we go there and we'll buy $2,000 or $3,000 worth of veneer as a club, and we buy wood at World Timber as a club. So we get some really good prices on things. And so we've started using more exotic woods, and one of the things that we're always trying to come up with is new ideas of how to improve or to give more color without having to do painting. Some of my first ornaments were a lot of painting, and I did snowmen, and I did penguins, and I did angels and things like that. And they all look pretty good with natural wood, but they enhance by having some color to them. With the snowman, I just did the head and put hats on them, and I've come up with 74 different kinds of hats. Some of them are like cowboys with arrows through the hat, baseball hat with a ball coming through the back of it where it's burned through the front where the pitch was so fast. So a lot of different stuff you can do with different kinds of ornaments. I'm going to do with exotic woods and some veneers. I'm hoping to get through 3, maybe 4 ornaments today with you, and we'll do the same ornaments tomorrow in the class. They're all usually from 2-inch scrap or 2-inch pieces that are different lengths and so forth. But with the veneers and with the laminating of them, you end up with some different shapes, different designs, and different color patterns. First thing I'm going to show you is this is a new version of doing a painted hot air balloon, which I had an article in AAW back in August 2013, and I did the hot air balloons, and I did them out of soft maple or cherry or whatever I had, and I put 3 coats of gesso on them, which is a primer for watercolors, acrylics, not watercolors, oil-based painting and acrylics, and sometimes pastels used on it. And that gives you a solid white surface, and then whatever colors you put on stay really bright. I used inexpensive paint called Americana acrylics. They're like, when you go to Michael's or AC Moore or whatever, they'll have them sometimes 5 bottles for $4 or something. I'm going to pass this around so you can see it. The first balloons I did the basket the same diameter as the bottom of the balloon, and they look pretty bulky. So over time I've made them smaller and smaller. I use a silk cord, and I'll show you about that when we get to that point. But long story short, I've gone from that painting, and I'm not that good at painting, so my wife does a lot of the painting. And I decided I would try to let her have more time doing jewelry and design, so I've started doing with exotic woods and veneers. This has what's called a core pattern in it, and you end up with a block like this. I'll pass one of each around, and you can go from one side of the room to the other. But the core is the middle section, and that's usually about 1 inch by 1 inch. And it can be whatever length you want. And then what I do is I want to have a 2-inch blank, so I glue up 1-inch wide pieces. So I come out to 2 inches in width by 1 inch thickness. So I'm ended up with this. And so what I've done is I've taken 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch of 2 different colors of exotic woods. In this case is yellow heart and Padauk. And then I put 2 different colors of veneer there and glued them all together with clamps. Next step after that, I glue with Tight Bond 3, because that gives me, according to the manufacturer, 10 minutes of working time before it sets up so stiff I can't move it. And the other Tight Bonds, they say, are around 5 minutes. I find it's not that much different in any of them, but I bought a lot of Tight Bond 3, so I use that. So then I've used all these 1-inch strips to build out to 2 inches wide, like you'll see when the blank goes by. So after that's dry, I clean it up so I have a nice glue surface, and I add 2 more colors of wood and 2 more colors of veneer to widen out the other side. Now this time I have to use 2-inch wide so that I'm evening out 2 inch by 2 inch. All right, once you get done, you end up with a balloon just like this. You don't even have to turn it or anything. It just comes out of the glue clamps like that. With this, I am comfortable. I have a Unisaw, which my wife bought me for anniversary one year. And my wife is one of these people, and there she is right there, and you can't have her. She is one of these people, when she hears me talking about something, she says, well, just go ahead and buy it. And, sometimes my knees get weak, and I say, okay, and I buy it. Anyhow, if you're like most wood turners, when you come up with a new project, you got to have a new tool anyway, right? So I'll pass this one around. This one's actually a core of Holley, which if you get Holley, you need to harvest it in January, February, and dry it as fast as you can, because it turns gray, green, blue, whatever color it feels like once you turn it, or once you cut it. So it needs to be when the sap is as low in the tree as possible, and you need to dry it as soon as possible or it starts changing color. I like to use Holley, but depending on where you buy it from, I've paid $18.50 a board foot for it, and I've seen it in some sawmill lists on different websites as much as $99 a board foot. So I don't like it that much. I'll use something else. The question is, if you dry the Holley, after you dry it, will it change color? And the answer is no. As long as it's dry and you don't get it wet, it's going to do fine. Now, it is a fast wicker in that if you've got a board sitting on the ground or on the floor and you get it in a puddle of water, it can wick up whatever junk's in the water, and it'll color up that way. So I always put mine on shelves. But I usually do everything in an 18.5-inch strip, because I can safely do that with a jig I've made that is 2x4s and 1x4s that actually runs the Bessemer gate on my saw. And so I have one for 1 inch and one for 2 inch thickness, and I can put the boards in there and run it through. and 18 inches because I made it about 12 inches long to keep it from bucking or anything. You can get a nice clean cut that way. And with fluid saw blades, you can get really specialized blades. I get one that's specially made for glue joints. It's about $59 or something, and it stays sharp forever. The good thing about it is you can get these things resharpened, and the one that does the best cut only has like 40 some odd teeth, where some of the other ones that are supposed to be smooth rip saw cuts are going to have 80 or 90. We're going to turn to this, and then I'll show you how to do the gondola, how to get a little texture on it, how to put the silk cord on. And when you get through, you should have a nice little disc like this. Have any of you ever turned the Ed Moore box? It's a little box that's just got a slight angle to it. It's about 1 3/4 inches long, and it has a flat top with a little finial on it. Look it up sometime when you're online. Look up Ed Moore box. Ed died a few years back from cancer, but he's a very, very accomplished turner up in Virginia. And those little lids like that are perfect. You only need 1/4 inch of wood, and you can use it on any kind of wood, and it just makes the whole box pop. Because as soon as you add some finish, like some clear lacquer or some clear polyurethane, all these colors get brighter. So now I've got an 18.5 inch stick of wood with all the gluing and everything, and it's just longer than this. It looks like that. Now, I don't worry. When you see those pieces coming around, you see I'm not trying to make them clean and square anymore. The only time I cut them to make them really square is when I've got to put the 2 inch wide pieces on there. From then on, everything's going to get turned around on the outside, so I'm not going to waste time on a saw, cleaning this thing up, making it look pretty. Okay? So, I want it to be truly the center of the balloon to be the center of the core. So instead of making my center by using the center finder from corner to corner, all I want to do is go from corner to corner on the actual core piece. You can see it on those. You can see the X, and I put a center punch there. That way, when I get through, the bottom will line up with the top, and the core will be in the center of it instead of sitting way off on the side, and I get an odd shape. Here's what we're headed towards, this, from that. You're going to see a couple of things. I like to use a steb center. I don't know if you guys ever used one of these. I was lucky enough to buy one of these when at Craft Supply they had them for $37.95. Now they're like $62.95. However, Penn State has some long ones that you can stick in a Morse taper too. They also have the same grooves here that will fit in your Talon or your Stronghold chuck. And they're $20.95 or $24.95. Get one of those. They're well worth it. They're like a safety center because the center punch goes in, this piece, like that. And then it's got all the teeth around the outside edge of it to hold it in place. All right, I've got the centers marked on this. So what I'm going to do now, and I use robust tool rests. I don't know if anybody have these, but they have that hardened steel rod across the top. I don't care what beginner you're teaching to use a skew or rough and gouge or whatever, they're not going to mess it up. I highly recommend it if you ever want to get a tool rest that you know is going to be straight all along. I use an English or a Continental spindle gouge, 35 millimeter, instead of a round or a rough and gouge. This is a lot lighter. It gives me a half cut. Doesn't have the wings on the side, so I don't have a tendency to catch. Now, if I'm doing spindle turning, long spindles, and I'm doing a lot of beads and coves, fillets, and so forth, I'll use a regular American rough and gouge because I can turn it sideways and come straight in and make a flat cut on anywhere. But with smaller pieces like this, I really like having the shorter turning radius there. I'm going to just rough this out and get it round. And you all know what a roughed out piece looks like. Now I'm going to put a tenon on it. And the next thing I'm going to do is cut a cove. Try to go somewhere down to about a 3/4 inch. I don't want to go too close to the chuck here, but I do want to have a nice tenon. My chuck will hold a nice 3/8 inch tenon, so I use a 3/8 inch beading parting tool to make my tenon. I can't go too small because I want to be able to grab it by the Talon chuck. I don't want to go too far without going in and chucking it up. So then I can tell if my colors are going to come as close to possible as being in the middle. I didn't quite get it centered there. Okay, so now I'm going to do my bead down here. I'll go ahead and finish making it round. So at the very end, I don't end up with a flat spot on my bead. I want to cut a cove here. That's about small enough. I'm going to work up a little closer here, raise the tool rest up a little. You'll notice that I'm always trying to cut. That'd be in the middle of the flute, just like on the picture. I'm trying to point my tool in the direction I'm making my cut, and I'm also cutting on the downhill side of the flute. Does anybody know why I do that? So if I have a catch, it's going to turn away from the wood. I can turn just as good and rub against the bevel or ride the bevel cutting on the inside, but if I have a catch, what's going to happen? It's going to flip my other side into the wood. So if I cut on the downhill half, as in the diagram there, it's going to always turn away. Now, that being said, if I have a catch today, it was the tool's fault. If I have 2 catches today, I'll probably change tools. If I have 3, that's a coincidence. If I have 5, I'll probably cut the lathe off and walk away. Anyway, let's try to get this done. I'm going to blend a bead, a half a bead, into my cove now to get the bottom part of my balloon. I'm a little bit high. Not me, but the tool rest. I have a tendency to make these a little bit long, and they don't really need to be as long as they are. It makes them look more like probably an 1800s balloon than something nowadays, because nowadays they just kind of go up like that. With using veneers and laminated wood, you'll be turning things and where the glue joints are. Sometimes I feel like there's a ridge there. When you turn the lathe off, you don't see it or feel it. I feel one right here, but I'm going to assume it's a glue joint. Getting back to a catch, a good friend of mine, Mike Stafford, who's a very good box turner. He's turned about 200 different kinds of wood for boxes, and he used to teach at John C. Campbell until he came up with cancer, and he's had a lot of residual problems from chemo and stuff since then, so he doesn't really teach. Anyway, I've got that shape, so I'm somewhere around here. The next thing I want to do is I want to hollow it out to make it lighter, because this will be a heavy block of wood otherwise. I think that'll take a 1/2 inch drill bit fairly easy. And I use a brad point whenever possible. This is designed for wood. The reason it has a point is to keep it going in the same direction, and these 2 outer edges keep it cutting a clean hole. It also has flutes that are wide enough and deep enough usually that move the wood out of the way. Where your mechanical, your regular steel bits have a different angle, they have a different edge to it. They're really designed to start where you've made a dimple in some metal. So this will just follow my my live center. I think that's about deep enough. Typically you want to measure, say you're about 1/8 of an inch from the top. And you can use Dale Nish's technique of leaving a little bit of a cup in the very top of it, so that if you have to, you can put a jam chuck in there and it'll find the center of it exactly. He does that on his birdhouses. Anybody ever turned a Dale Nish birdhouse or seen his book? Yeah, he leaves that little cup in there. I'm going to actually cut off and see if I did it deep enough. No, I didn't. So I'll go a little deeper. Try not to go through. I hardly ever do. Hopefully I'm close enough there. So I'm at this point. I've made my shape. I've got a little support back in the back. And now I'm going to hollow it out. Now for typical hollowing, people always, use bent tools and all that. And a bent tool is really a scraper. And with a scraper, once you start building up shavings, you got to clean them out or you start getting catches and it bangs your tool around. So I had 72 of these to make, and I sure as heck didn't want to be keeping stopping and blowing out. And I timed myself. It took me about 5 minutes to hollow one of these. So I said, I'm going to try a 1/4 inch round scraper. So I put the 1/4 inch round scrapers, cut about a 45. Can you see? Can you see that? And being a skew, I just hone it with a CBN or a diamond hone, and you can sharpen it about 10 times that way before you have to go back to the grinder. So I want this point to be going where I want. I'm using the toe of it as my cutting edge, and I've got that whole length there. I've got almost 3/8 of an inch of cutting. It's like a sharp razor blade. And I'm just going to follow the outside wall of this balloon on the inside. I want to cut at dead center, so I have to have my tool rest set so the cutting edge is right on dead center. Try not to go through the wall, but if I do, it'll just be a piece of silver showing up with all the wood. I used to make these holes 3/8 of an inch. And we had a young lady join our club named Rachel, and she had a small finger that was small enough to go in there and see whether they had a smooth edge. And it bothered me because she'd tell me what was wrong with them. So I started drilling 1/2 inch holes instead. I'll show her. So I'm done hollowing. All right. At this point at home, I'm not going to sand. You guys don't need a bunch of dust, especially exotic wood dust flying around. But at home I use Abernet, and it lasts a long time. Even though these are small pieces, I've got some hardwoods and some softwoods here. I'll use 80 grit to start with. I use 80 grit almost all the time. I just go ahead and get all the tool marks and everything off. Takes just a second, even on a big bowl. And then you go to 100, 120, 150, and I mean you can get up to 400 in just a few minutes because you've gotten the shape finished up and you've got all your tool marks out. If you get a burnish mark and you start sanding at 100 or 120, you're going to take forever to try to get it out. Hit it with some 80 grit. It'll clean it right up and you're ready to go. That burnish mark's going to show up when you put a finish on if you don't get rid of it. Okay? Everybody follow me with that? I use 1/4 inch round skew to hollow. All right, now I would sand it and I'd go up, since this is exotic wood, I'd go up to about 400 to 600 grit. Doesn't take long, it's real small. And then I'll put either a spray lacquer or I'll put shellac. not shellac with wax in it, but regular shellac, used as a sand or sealer, and then I'll put either a 3-part mix or polyurethane on top of it to hold the color. I tried a bunch of different things because all woods eventually, especially colored woods, will eventually turn brown, except yellow heart. So I like to use a lot of yellow heart. Anyway, I'd sand on up. If I was doing a painted ornament, a painted balloon, something like this, or the spiral, I just sand up to 220 because I'm going to put gesso on it and I'm going to put 3 coats on it. If I do the gesso, I'll put 3 coats on and then I'll sand it with 320 to make it smooth enough to paint. So that's how the gesso feels and how it looks. You can draw your different patterns on to do your different colors of paint. Okay? So now what I want to do is get some extra waste out of here. Now, I'm a person, if I can, I'm going to save myself from having to use a jam chuck. But I want to try to make this shape continue so I don't have a flat spot or a real pointy spot on top. So I'm going to give myself some room with a parting tool. I've got a little ridge. I like to use a skew, but as I said, one catch, it must be the tool. So we're going to try to use the skew here without having a catch. Because if you really want to mess something up, you use a skew, right? That really messes things up really good. It puts a neat spiral on, and you can tell people that you meant to do that, but that's not really the case. And unfortunately, somebody named Bob used this tool last and he didn't sharpen it. You got to have enough room in there for your skew to go up against it. Otherwise, you're going to break it off. Now, and my red heart was a little bit too hot. Anyhow, red heart is really bad about splitting when it gets hot. And you'll see how this split on me. But I hollowed this out, and you never saw me clean it or anything, right? Now, that took me, 30 seconds, and I was running my mouth, so I probably could have done it in 10 or 15. But there's a hot air balloon, and I would put it on a jam chuck, clean the top of it up. I use 1/4-inch round skew to hollow up to a 3.5-inch globe, and it doesn't take but about a minute to do one, and you're not having to stop and clean the shavings out and everything. What's happening is, with that blade cut at a 45 or the edge of it cut at a 45, it's just churning it all up and making dust out of it instead of making chips, which is what a scraper will do, or those hollowing tools that are square. They'll just make chips, so they clog up real fast. One day I'm going to teach David Ellsworth how to do that, and he won't have to keep stopping his lathe, and he'll be able to do one of those globes in like 10 minutes or something. You guys ever seen David Ellsworth turn one of his spheres that's hollowed? It got a hole about the size of your finger. I saw him do one. It takes a long time for him cleaning it out, but he's an amazing turner. I got my hot air balloon. I sand that all up, get it ready for a finish and everything. I've got the little button, which is going to be perfect for making a really cool looking top for a Edmore box. All I need now is a gondola for my basket. For my balloon. I'm going to use just a real small piece of yellow heart here. I'll change out this chuck. So I'm using some pin jaws here, and I'm going to use, a lot of times I'll use a square or a scrap or something of yellow heart, or I'll use Chalk de Vega, anything that looks kind of orangey yellow to yellow, and give me something that's kind of a basket color. Like I say, when I first started doing these, I was making the gondolas the same size as the hole in the balloon, so it was like 3/8 of an inch, and they look real clunky. Although, I mean, you still recognize it as a hot air balloon, but it wasn't that great. So, anyway, with this being a balloon, I need to have it round for one thing, but then I also need to have it look like it's woven. So I'm going to put a little 1/16 of an inch or smaller bead at the top and the bottom, and then I'm going to texture in the middle. And in this case, because of time, I'm going to use a Wagner texturing tool, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. But I really want a real small looking gondola. So I'm going to use the widest part as the top of my basket or my gondola. And I'll make a little point here for my skew to go into in just a minute. But let me make the beads up at the top and the bottom. The bead at the bottom needs to be slightly smaller than the one at the top. Otherwise it looks kind of funny. And I want my basket to taper down to it. Here's a Wagner texturing tool, and I'll pass it around in just a minute, but it has basically a high-speed steel knurl on it. Oops, right there. And all it can make really is a diamond pattern. And you push it on slowly. And sometimes I have to move it down a little bit because my basket isn't totally the same width or height in this case. Then again, I'm going to use my round skew to hollow it out. And because I'm going to use some silk cord to hang the basket, not a wire or something like that. You can use a lot of things to hang a basket from, or the gondola from the basket, but with the skew, I'm going to just go in here. And I want to go at least 1/4 inch deep, so I got plenty of depth. And you can maybe see the texture, and I'll pass this around in just a second. But now I want to take it off. I've finished it. With the Wagner, you don't end up with a whole lot of shavings or little piece of wood sticking out. So I don't really have to sand it most of the time. I've gotten tighter with yellow heart than I used to. Yellow heart I used to get for $7.50 a board foot. Now it's $12. And so I have a tendency to save the little pieces. I want to have this up in a little bit of a concave in the bottom. This one's a touch bigger. This is more like 3/8 of an inch wide. But you want to have some depth in it because you're going to puddle some thick super glue or CA glue. This is the gondola or the basket that hangs below the balloon. What I do is I use thick CA glue. What I do is I take the gondola and I put 2 drops of thick CA glue in and spray it with the accelerator. Then I take some of this bead cord. I'll pass all these things around. But I get bead cord. It's a silk cord that looks like a rope because it's wrapped around. And so I get that and I hang it up on a tree limb and let thin CA glue drip all the way from the top down to the bottom. And by the time it gets to the bottom, every bit of it's absorbed some CA glue. And I go inside and watch TV, catch up on Law and Order or whatever. Come back out about an hour later and it'll be dry and it'll be stiff. This is wrapped around a piece of cardboard, so every place that's wrapped on the cardboard leaves a little bit of a zigzag. I just go in with a pair of scissors and cut each one of those so they're almost all even. And I've got these stiff pieces of silk cord. Once it's glued into the thick CA, it's springy. All right? So I've put 2 in. I let those dry. It takes about a minute. Then I put another drop or 2 of CA glue in, and I put the other 2 cords opposite. Now I've got 4 cords that are springy. First ones I did, I tried to do it with the cord dry, and it was like trying to nail Jell-O to a tree. I mean, the stuff was just sliding and moving and everything, and you had to hold it with a piece of stainless steel or something in place while the glue dried, and you're holding one, and you got to spray some accelerator and put some glue and all that. You only got two hands, so this was just an ingenious thing. It occurred to me one night while I was sleeping, I think. I don't know. The question is, am I stiffening the silk cord with CA glue? I'm using thin, and that packet that goes around, you can buy it online. You can buy it at Hobby Lobby. You can buy it at AC Moore. You can buy it at Michael's. I buy it online from a company. I just Google silk cord, bead cord, or whatever, and it'll pop up a bunch of different places. And I'll buy 20 packs of it at a time for about $2.25 or so, and they'll ship it for free. You can buy it at, I think, most of the hobby stores, the big box stores, for around $3.25, $3.95, something like that. And it's enough to do about probably 14, 15 balloons. It'll give you a lot of little pieces. But it becomes stiff after you've got the CA glue soaked into it. So that's why I use it. It gives you that spring when it's glued into the gondola. It gives you a spring. You can close those up, stick them inside the hole of the balloon, and they'll hold to the edge. Use some thick CA glue to hit each one of the places where it touches on the inside, and then spray with accelerator. Now, the cool thing is, if you put the top of the balloon on the jam chuck and you bring your tailstock up, you've got a little dimple there. You put your tailstock right in there and give it a little tap, and that'll give you a great place to start your screw eye to hang the ornament from, and it'll keep it all centered up while you sand it or whatever. This is something I tried. This is some stuff from, I think, Craft Supply. It's a spectral wood or diamond wood, like that. And I tried that to see what it looked like. I think to get something really cool, you'd have to cut it at an angle or whatever, but it holds color really well, and that's just got like a polyurethane, clear polyurethane on it. So that's, I mean, if you don't want to glue stuff up, you can buy wood that's already glued. I also use Hallmark hooks for the ornaments that I sell, and they're not cheap. They're about 50 cents to $1 a piece, depending on where you get them. You can't get the gold ones or the brass ones anymore. They started making them stainless steel. But anyway, that's my hot air balloon. And there's an article actually a tutorial, Dennis calls them, in More Wood Turning Magazine, which is an online magazine. Any members of that? More Wood Turning Magazine? It's great. Comes out every month. You can go to archive copies. You can go to old tutorials. He's got another page that'll send you to, and it's got, I don't know, 300 or so projects that you can do, and it's got the Turner's original notes and stuff of how he did it. And I've got 9 of them on there, and just yesterday, today's the 2nd, right? Or the 3rd. 2 days ago, the article that was in there is about the laminated hot air balloons that you just saw me do. So that's on there, and you can print copies off this page and stuff like that. And if you go to my website, which is BobBaucomWoodturner.com, I have 10 different handouts on there that you can either download and print off of that. And it's got a bunch of pictures of my gallery things and things like that. It's not a totally finished web page because I haven't put anything on there for sale. But when I go to galleries, it depends on what the split is, but I'll sell the laminated hot air balloons for anywhere from $36 to $48. If it's a 50-50, I want $48. The veneer I get from SAUR, S-A-U-E-R, veneer, and they're actually mentioned in the magazine article if you go on there. Now, Dennis will let you, More Wood Turner magazine will let you actually download or see a sample copy, but I'm not sure if it's the actual newest one or not. I think it may be something that's archived, but it's pretty nice in that you can go on there and really see what the whole magazine's about. And it has a story about each one of the article writers and so forth each time.